space between the space between the space between the space
Again, hey, welcome to Oneness Talk Radio. Here we are for another episode with Ardavany and Suzanne Toro. I'd say hello, Suzanne.
Hello, how are you all out there? Welcome.
We're back. We're back for another episode. We've gone from being present to self-observation to the gatekeeper, and then we wanted to add how karma is related to the gatekeeper, right?
Yeah.
Wow, I'm talking loud again. I gotta tone that down so I don't burn out. But really interesting subject matter that we want to address. It's maybe a little recap, Suzanne. I mean, give us a little recap. Help me out here.
Help you out there. So we started back to basics, I would call it, with observing the breath, bringing ourselves into the present moment, and just connecting to where we are. And from there, we then dove into taking pictures, making pictures of ourself in that present moment. And by gathering those moments, we start to engage our gatekeeper. And that gatekeeper assists us in seeing what I would call juices us up, you might say is good, and what is diminishing to our energy field, and you might say bad. We used that language, I think, the last time.
Bad? You don't like the word bad?
Well, my goal is to move beyond duality, so I try to keep it as simplistic as energy, but positive charge.
And that's what we're dealing with here, ladies and gentlemen. We got an enlightened being on our hands who's moving past duality.
Well, I wouldn't say I'm not enlightened.
For the rest of us mere mortals, we're stuck here, and we're trying to get out of duality and find our way to where Miss Suzanne Toro apparently exists.
I don't exist there. I do my best to be there for my clients, and I'm work in progress for myself.
You are.
So I would not say that I'm enlightened at all. Quite fallible for sure.
Oh, but then you're stuck in duality. So you have a good and a bad.
Yeah, but for me, when you're recontextualizing good and bad, it reinforces duality. So it's the simplistic way and energetic way to look at something so we don't get stuck in story or delusion is to say, okay, is this beneficial? How does my energetic field feel? Or is this diminishing to my energetic field? And that right there keeps it more neutral from the respect of good or bad. And then because good or bad sometimes has things like shame, or good could lead to addiction and overdoing it on sense pleasure things. So some people can think this is good, it feels so good, but they're addicted to drugs or sex or shopping. So yeah, temporarily it might feel good, but then there's a diminishing return, like eating a bunch of ho-hos,
A ho-hos? Gosh, so your gatekeeper better keep an eye out for those ho-hos.
Yeah.
Otherwise you might get stuck in
one too many ho-hos.
One too many ho-hos. But just to get.
And so I think that led us to here where we're beginning to explore a little bit deeper, because we got into that dualistic good, bad, and really we've been talking about mastery. We concluded in the last episode about, using the analogy of a master artist or a master athlete, or, some of the enlightened beings, not including me on planet Earth, that I've come across that are deeply embodying a mysticism that's not explainable to the everyday human. So from that respect, that's where the work comes. And the gatekeeper, as it engages, is going to keep you in a place where you can keep reinforcing those efforts so you stay there and keep building upon that. Like you said, you'll slip back down the mountain.
So just to be clear, I mean, ideally you listen to this show while you're observing your body breathing. We want to get you into an open space and try to turn this next hour into some sort of a meditative repose, and maybe some of this information will click with you, and maybe you can turn this into a bit of a practice and verify anything that we might be saying, because that's absolutely essential to verify in this process, and what it means to you and how you're experiencing some of these suggestions that we're giving you. So to be present, just observe the fact that your body's breathing, and let that happen, and then be here. And it allows us to listen a little deeper, allows us to leave our days where it belongs, and that's behind us, and find our way into this moment so that we can eventually realize our potential in it, which is what this entire quest is for. This enlightenment path has many wonderful discoveries along the way. And as your practice deepens, the onion begins to reveal its core. The problem I have with the onion analogy is there's nothing in an onion except for more onion. So it would be a frivolous journey to use an onion, but
We
maybe
could use an artichoke.
if you could
There's a
hybrid,
heart.
if you could
There's
hybrid,
a heart
if
in
you
the
could
middle of the artichoke. You can take the leaves off, one leaf at a time.
or you can hybrid an onion and an oyster together and peel away the oyster until you get to the pearl.
Yeah, I don't know.
Probably the
artichoke with a heart.
yeah,
It's so sweet and yummy in
yeah,
there.
and then you got all those prickly, dangerous things on the way, which is perfect. This is exactly the journey, the enlightened journey, right? Is
Absolutely.
the prickly things
The
get
higher
you,
the
and
stakes get, the more the prickers pop up.
then you got the mountain analogy, right? Where you're climbing up the mountain, and if you don't understand something along the way, you slip back down the mountain and left to reaffirm the fundamentals and get back up that mountain, and then see what else you get confronted with that you didn't deal with or confide in. But try to observe the body breathing. Welcome to Oneness Talk Radio, and we're going to get into the Gatekeeper, and then maybe redefine a little self-observation, a little couple minutes of review, self-observation. How did we come down? So we went from being present into self-observation mode. And why did we go into self-observation mode?
To see where we are in time and space, to capture some pictures, soul selfies, beyond the maybe not with judgment, but with the objectivity, just to snap of pictures where we are in a series of pictures, and those based on our efforts will accumulate to something one way or the other. And I also shared recapitulation, a way to rewind and watch your day or your activities pretty quickly. Same thing, capture a bunch of pictures, and that gives you a good body.
Recapitulation is not the same thing as self-observation.
It is this. Well, it's a
different technique.
Yeah, but it's similar at the end of a day. You would do it at the end of the day, like a quick rewind of your day.
Well, it's not self-observation. That's something else.
Observation as you go through the moments, but it's a great meditative technique to get to an understanding of what actions you're taking as we get into karma. It's a great tool for that because it starts to yield to you like, oh, and you just see, just no different.
Self-observation has no analysis in it.
Right, and neither does again, if you take a picture and look at a picture, what do you see, Thomas? What do you see when you look at a picture?
Whatever it is that you remember.
When you snap a selfie, what do you see?
Well, it depends on my state of mind as I
just
observe.
right now. Take a picture of yourself in your mind's eye.
Okay.
What do you see?
What's here?
What do you see?
I see you. I see the room. I feel not what I see. It's what I feel in the space.
Right. So a recapitulation is similar. It's the exact same thing. I see you, me, sitting here. I see the color of your shirt. I see and sense the color of my shirt. I see the chair that I'm sitting on. It's, again, the same thing. You're observing it. You can do it in the present moment, or you can do it at the end of a day. So we just share those techniques to bring it back. But self-observation is in the moment, in the present moment. You're snapping those pictures, and they're accumulating to something. And then we said, well, you would determine if your gatekeeper is awake or not.
Okay, so let's not miss the essence of the story. So self-observation is an attempt to rediscover who you are truthfully relative to what you think you've become, and to begin to rediscover yourself for the first time, every time, in the moment. which can allow you to overcome your own biases, your own limitations, and expand this box, and to eventually create a file within your mind that has a fresh sense of who you are in time and space. And hopefully that file of objective impressions allows you to move through space freer, with greater confidence, or greater sense of the truth of who you are in relation to everything else. The relevant factor there is to how you are in the moment as you take this photograph, even in an emotional state to take a photograph, and to be able to think on your feet in that moment and not get stuck back in your head. Take a photograph in an emotional moment, take a photograph in a heightened level of bliss, take a photograph in a seemingly mundane moment, take a photograph in relation to your friends, take a photograph of how you are emotionally. One of the resounding observations of man when he's in a lower state of consciousness is that man is legion. He's many. He's many, many, many aspects. The idea of taking years of photographs is to make it less of a legion and more singular, more Neo-like.
Right.
To get a greater sense of the truth of the one.
Right, and we talked about that, bringing the ego, like the Zorba the Greek, with the spirit, the soul, Buddha, your inner divine being.
And so you can look at this information also as a resting place for all of the information that allows you to sustain your consciousness, all the information that allows you to stay awake, woke, and not how it, woke is not how it's being used.
Well, let's not
politically.
Let's keep things on track here. Let's
well,
not go into political stuff.
Let's not lose woke. Woke
awake. You could just use awake.
Woke doesn't mean attaching yourself to another set of ideas. It means that you're free of those ideas and free to assess the truth of circumstances as they are. And to awaken is sort of the goal of the enlightened person, right? So through self-observation, which is very close to the end game, but it's the beginning steps of getting to a point of self-realization,
right.
And strengthening that muscle, which allows us then to determine what we need to sustain a greater level of consciousness, and then what's hindering us from our consciousness, or what's hindering us from maintaining the truth of what we really are in a given moment. And so that's when the Gatekeeper came in. We suggested the Gatekeeper last week.
We talked quite at length about the Gatekeeper.
So all of us have already, we've established a Gatekeeper regardless. He might be sleeping at the gate and everything and anything is coming in through our sensory impressions, and everything comes in and we can't discern one thing from the next thing. As this file of sensory impressions begins to build, the Gatekeeper begins to become more alert, more aware, more awake, starts to discern the difference between the types of impressions and how it receives impressions in order for the Gatekeeper to assess what can be let in and what needs to be let go, what needs to be put to the side. Now this is where we talked about, when we had our pre-meeting, we talked about karma, right? Bringing karma into that.
Right.
And so what was kind of neat for the analogy of karma under these circumstances would be, how many of those same deterrents wrap themselves around and keep coming back to the Gatekeeper, trying to get in? How many times does that one thing, that karmic spinning circle, come back around to the Gatekeeper and try to get in, try to influence what the machine does next, what our mechanics, what our physiology does next, whether it wants to take us down a road of darkness or whether it would like to lift us up into the light. So maybe you could explain karma in terms of in relation to the gatekeeper.
Well, so there's karmic patterns, things that we're destined to transform. So that thing that you're suggesting, the thing we let in, maybe the habitual habits, the behaviors. You might see these in addictive behaviors is a good way to look at it. Ones that, again, quote unquote, are bad or don't feed your system. And again, it's not an outward. I think it's really important. Self-realization comes from within. So the self has to take responsibility for self. And that pattern, no matter what, we can shift it up. It's a choice in that moment. And the more awareness we have, the easier it is to do. Sometimes it takes a moment. And then the karmic choices we're making in every moment is how we show up. And those choices will lead us to helping us up the mountain, or they'll push us back down the mountain. And from an Eastern perspective, a yogic or a Buddhist perspective or a Zen perspective, you're making your efforts for the future, beyond in the moment, but also in the future. And we talked a little bit about it. We're actually, paying back our debts in the present moment, and then we're reaping the benefits of our deposits. So sometimes that gets a little bit difficult for people to swallow because we're such an on-demand society. We think we should be able to go to our ATM and reconcile everything at any given moment, but that's not always the case with the cosmic bank account. So, so karma, and how that engages with the gatekeeper is if, it's like your little devil or your little angel on your shoulder encourages you, hey,
Little devil, little angel.
encourages like, hey, come on, step it up a notch, choose a higher path, you'll be supported. Yet sometimes we like to wrestle with ourselves or go down into Dante's Inferno.
Dante's Inferno.
Yeah, and that can be a reaction, a motive reaction, a spiritual reaction, a mental reaction. It could be a visceral, physical reaction. There's so many different things that can lead us into these karmic choices that we make every single day.
Okay. So in relation to our gatekeeper, the practical practice would be like, let's say, what's karmic? So
Everything's karmic.
Right, everything's karmic. So usually we relate it to bad karma, right? Because you just use that previous to starting the show. You used it in the term of bad karma.
Yeah, or a withdrawal or deposit.
Like somebody's going to suffer. You're going to suffer consequences because of your karma.
Well, if we look at it from cause and effect, you take an action, there's an effect. There's sometimes an immediate effect. Like if I pull back a rubber band and let it go, it might hit you. Or if I don't choose to let go, it's not going to do that. So the positive effect would be that I didn't hit you with the rubber band, unless you wanted to be hit with the rubber band. You might enjoy it. So everything we choose to do has some type of effect, or anything we choose not to do can have an effect. That not word you love.
Not.
Yeah. So those choices that we make on a daily basis are basically depositing energy into our present and future moments, and or pulling energy from our present and future moments. And so, sometimes that pause, even just bringing yourself into the present moment with your breath, saying, if you have enough awareness and you're not in a emotive state, it's a little bit easier, but you're saying, do I really want to take this action? Your gatekeeper can actually help you with that. The gatekeeper is your inner wisdom. How do you really want to take this risk here? What value is it? And what are the consequences? Or
So how do we stop that karmic spinning circle?
Well, if you're tired of it enough, you'll eventually just stop. You'll get out of the gerbil wheel and stop participating. And then it'll require you to notice that you're about to enter it before you get into it. So you go the other way. But people pretty habitually, they kind of like to trick themselves into thinking that they're not repeating the same cycle. Oh, I got it. And the best thing is the resolution of the cycle when you're still in it versus stepping out of it and not resolving it, like the person that likes to run. Really, they're not resolving anything. They just run, and then they're destined to repeat it again and get stuck in that wheel until they can get out. So once you're in there, you might as well liberate it. And if you choose that you don't want to be in there, you liberate it and you leave, and woohoo, you move on. from that lesson, from, and that neutralization, or I call it balancing the books with the universe. Yeah, and even, the other thing to note when we take action is, even if we choose a different path, doesn't mean that all has been reconciled, that we've engaged with. So certain actions that we can take, we might have to, it's not punishment, but we might have to pay back those debts that we made. And so,
debt. It's not punishment, but you have to pay back those debts that you made.
well, it's kind of like if you think you could eat 20 McDonald's meals, and I don't know, in a day for 30 days straight, there's going to be an effect on the physical body, right? So you can't take those meals back, but you're going to have to reconcile that some way, whether it's exercise, healthy eating, understanding maybe that you have an eating disorder, whatever it might be. There's some kind of reconciliation that has to happen. And so during that process, it's sometimes not easy because you're suffering at that point when you're reconciling that lesson. And those are big lessons. There's different levels of reconciliations of karma. Some are quite easy, and others are like, they're come with a lot. So, it's a process for sure.
All right.
But the gatekeeper can help us. That's the activation of showing us the wise path, maybe helping us with how to stay on that path of where I think all humanity really wants to do right by one another, unless you have a pathology of certain conditions that just really don't allow it to happen. I think most humanity are good people. They want to do right by humans. And so, that's a beautiful thing, and can be celebrated from within to the outer world.
All right. So we have this progression from being present long enough, right, in order to be able to take clear photographs of ourselves in the moment, take enough photographs of ourselves to wake up our gatekeeper, to start to discern our sensory impressions and decide what gets in and what stays out. And then we have this karmic life. We have this life that we've been living. We have our ancestral life. We have the life that we've lived while we've been here on this planet in this form. And all of that carries with it karma. Just by simply being born, we're creating problems. Just by being born, right?
Well, we're making deposits or withdrawals from our cosmic bank account. And a human life, from a Buddhist perspective, is a precious thing. It's not to be wasted. And so if we all took that effort, I've definitely wasted certain efforts in my life that, I can't change. But the reality is that imagine if every single day we said, I'm not going to waste this precious life on a lot of those superfluous things. Sometimes they're harmful things.
But even the wish of wanting not to waste time without understanding how presence adds to the ability to begin to take responsibility for who one is in any given moment, then waking up the gatekeeper and being able to discern impressions without having those three things in place, having the ability to actually change or manage ancestral karma or manage what's been created up to this point in your life becomes impossible. And that's what we need to understand, is that these three things that gatekeeper needs to wake up before anything else becomes possible. And we want to be able to understand that level of discipline. And there's many different levels of discipline, all sorts of issues. The samurai doesn't sleep, he rests. Well, what does that mean? Well, it means that the gatekeeper never goes to sleep. And even when the body's resting, there's somebody minding the store.
That's awareness in all waking, all states of being.
Yeah. And in order to attain that level of consciousness, it requires a high level of fitness as well. The energy needs to be available. One has to be at their peak performance. That sort of an effort. So it's interesting to understand, and the gatekeeper starts to learn this too, because diet becomes essential to anybody that's on the path. You realize that, hey, what I'm putting in my body is not allowing me to sustain my effort, and I falter, I need to do something about that. And so impressions, not only of the mind, but also of of the body, and what we put in the body becomes relevant to the journey in order to sustain the gatekeeper
Absolutely.
and to stay awake. And then when these karmic cycles come up, like let's say relationship dynamic, like you're hardwired to your parents, and a lot of times those behaviors that come up in you are not, you don't understand those behaviors because they're hardwired into you. So and every time you get into a relationship, the same sort of dynamic starts to unfold, and it almost feels mechanical and with an inability to escape. But with a fresh pair of eyes moving into circumstances, one can begin to understand that karmic spinning circle is not even your own, but an ancestral gift or curse passed down to their progeny. And so now it's up to you to recognize it as such and to re-perceive it in a way in which it becomes part of an asset, becomes part of your character, part of understanding, part of having not only insight into yourself, but now you have that ability to see it in others. And that, in essence, stops the karmic spinning circle. That, in essence, allows us to spin out of that orbit and then find a larger planet to circulate around.
Well, this is
so
all
that's-
internal work.
so
This
that-
isn't like,
Yeah,
you know.
internal work, but no,
Yeah.
it's not internal as much as how we engage the space. It's very
Well, true
it's very-
samurai
it's very-
can transform
it's-
all energies, so you don't have to like keep abandoning the set to, you know, a lot of times there's misconceptions with people. They feel they have to run or they have to disappear or they're going to find something else someplace else. But the reality is all energy can be transformed. So within any dynamic, all things can be transformed to exactly what you want. And it's a mind that is closed off to that pure potentiality that doesn't allow it to occur. And so if you hang around some higher vibratory beings, you will see they transform the energy around no matter who's in the space. And so they don't have to exchange people in the set. They welcome it all to transform. And that's, you know, once we are engaged with our gatekeeper and we have self-awareness, in every moment we can be of service to the ecosystem and help it transform.
Yeah, but without that gatekeeper having awoken, that high idea is unattainable. And so once that gatekeeper wakes up and is diligent and has learned enough about the environment, about its own body, about the world around it, about how it perceives the world around it, and can readjust and make good choices and let in what can be let in order to further an understanding and to deflect lower frequencies, that evolution doesn't become possible. And that's why these 3 steps are really important. Understanding the present, mastering just being in the present, and then starting to work through the present by conscientiously, when one finds oneself emotional, to take a nice clear photograph and to attempt to reassess that relationship dynamic in that moment. And in doing that, there's a nice, deep, clear impression of how you are, who you are in relation to somebody else, or to the world, or to your job, or to whatever. And once there's enough of those photographs taken, then that gatekeeper wakes up and wants to stay awake. Why? Because one fly in the ointment ruins the entire drink. There's a cap on the possibility of evolving past a certain point if there's a fly in that ointment. If there's a problem at the base or there's a problem with the hard wiring, that person will not be allowed to move on. They have to figure out where that fly is, and they have to clean it up.
Yeah,
or when it flies around again, it has to be removed. Otherwise, if that fly gets in, on the basis on which that human being crystallizes their consciousness, if there's a fly there, they won't be able to realize their potential. And that's why that gatekeeper becomes very important. And the higher wishes and the higher ideals of consciousness and enlightenment and increasing one's level of being or attaining nirvana or whatever other words that represent the ideal human, don't even think about it. Don't even think about it until
Well, there's
until you understand the environment, until you understand yourself in relation to the environment. And so karma, in relation to it, is something coming around the bend again, inevitably speaking, because as we live our lives,
there's two things.
Whether it be a person that we wronged or a person we righted, inevitably there's another opportunity to smooth that out or make that right, or to externally consider that individual in such a way that you have gained an understanding of their suffering and can then empathize with them and see them with a fresh pair of eyes. That karmic circle will keep coming around. And the lesson of how to manage those moments properly will determine your ability to survive in a higher realm long enough.
Well, I think there's two things for listeners. So one, we have karmic action that we're taking all day long, and then we have habitual patterns, karmic lessons that and you mentioned ancestral, when we're magnetized to our parents, there's definite aspects of the yin and the yang, from the masculine father embodiment to the mother, that are within us. So we've magnetized to them an electromagnetic field at a conception. And so these deeper habitual patterns that we're destined to liberate with awareness and with positive efforts, meaning deposits into your current bank account and your future bank account, will yield positive things and assist you, because simultaneously we might have additional karmic landmines, if you will, or karmic supports, deposits, that ripen and are there to support us one way or the other. So we're always surfing, so I wouldn't discourage anyone. You're going to always be evolving and surfing and keep putting the efforts there, and to have a deep engagement with that gatekeeper, because you can really set the tone. It's kind of like if you woke up every day in service to you and the people around you, life is going to feel a lot different, versus if you wake up every day feeling that you are entitled to take. Those are two different realities, and they create different karmic engagements. So that example of like being in service to someone that feels they have to go out and conquer, like the old paradigms that we're liberating past, it creates, a withdrawal, because nature teaches us reciprocation. That's how nature's designed. It's a receiving and giving loop, which keeps us in harmony with our natural system, which is
so what is that all about? So what is that's a statement about what is, and so application goes.
So if you're in the present moment with yourself, you see where you're at, and maybe you have some karmic patterns that you're destined to shed. You've seen yourself enough that but you're ready to engage with your gatekeeper. Then you can simply engage Mother Nature really powerfully as your guidepost. Nature is there showing us how to remain in harmony, and it's available to us at all times. Nature is a reciprocal and regenerative process, meaning that your bank account will keep filling up. And so the application would be that, I'm here to receive, but also what am I to give? It's in such tandem that you're working towards those efforts. That's why a lot of the indigenous tribes have different processes every day that they give to their altars, they give to the earth when they've made crops. They understand that there's a reciprocation with this living, breathing organism, no different than there's a reciprocation with ourselves and the world around us. It's that taking element, and we think we can cheat the system, and that's where entropy happens. That's where degradation of energy happens, because we think,
not if the gatekeeper is educated. So if there's none of that happening, if the gatekeeper is woken up, it's only when the gatekeeper goes to sleep that the trickery can begin to overtake the being.
Well, there's a lot of people that feel they're awake and might feel they have their gatekeeper engaged, yet they're still in a trickster mode. So to keep it simple for the listeners, when we're engaging with our energy, where are we putting it? Are we in agreement that we want to exchange the energy? We want to build the energy. Start with yourself. And then what is the outcome? What's the benefit of that on an inner level? And then that starts to ripple out into the outer world. If you're an addict of some kind, that's probably the most like obtuse thing we could refer to. But if you're an addict and you have some afflictions, that takes some honesty. That takes a real sit down with your gatekeeper and say, wow, I love the idea of being a higher states of being, but maybe I need to reconcile that I have these afflictions and I need to make peace and liberate those before which you were saying, before you step past there. Maybe that's your fly in the ointment. So there's a lot of people that will trick themselves.
You're talking about a lot of flies in the ointment there, and you're pretty much in alignment with what I was saying, that if that person is engaging in expression of negative emotion or fear-based behavior and causing destruction, that we would call that definitely a fly in the ointment, and that gatekeeper is definitely asleep or not educated. So the idea and the reason for taking fresh photographs of who one is in life is so that you can have your own assessment of who you are, and somebody else's opinion doesn't matter, somebody else's culture doesn't matter. Your objective sense of the truth and reassessing that gives you the basis on which to make better decisions. Now, we're assuming that the person has the aim of waking up or becoming conscious or developing some aspect of themselves that makes them feel like they're realizing their potential in the time that they have here on this earth. That's really important. So thanks for clarifying that. The fly in the ointment are those problems. That's how we know that we need this self-observation mode never really goes away, because we're continually collecting and learning about our environment so that we know how to navigate them with an open heart and not resort to fear, because the moment that happens, we explode our finer substances and are slipping down the mountain. And so it's really important that when we slip, we observe that, hey, we can't be so involved in the slip. We got to go, oh, wow, I didn't understand that. I didn't manage that the way that I could have. I didn't perceive it from an intelligent perspective that would have allowed me to maintain my being. Those sorts of things are what the mind is doing as it fails. Like I'm failing. Or let's say that somebody gets really angry, right, and they blow their lid, and then in that they've just blown up all the creative juices that they might have worked months and months and months to get. And they're like, wow, that's my Achilles right there. I need to observe myself in that mode and get another opportunity where I can turn that around, because I know, karmically speaking, it's going to come back around. I'm going to have another opportunity to behave better. I'm going to have another opportunity to have compassion and empathy, as opposed to hit somebody with the same vitriol that they hit me with, and then we're syncing up with the darkest forces of nature. Well, and then we're like, and then you're going to go home to your kids and say, yeah, I'm enlightened, your dad's something really special. Or you're going to go home to your students, you're going to say, yeah, I'm really special. I just blew up on the corner there and completely betrayed anything I might have been teaching. So. Right.
So, but I think, Thomas, to let everyone know we are fallible human beings, and to be easy with yourself. And you might see it as everything's wasted, but it's really not. And there's karmic moments that happen. So sometimes
you're such a girl.
No, think about it. I always go to nature. So nature has lightning storms, thunderstorms, volcanoes.
You're a girl to the bone. It's mommy to the bone. And I think
I've trained really hard for things.
I think a lot of people need mommy, and I think it's great. But the road to enlightenment is not necessarily a comfortable mommy road.
I'm not saying there's a comfortable mommy road. I've sat with myself a lot. I've run up the mountain and down the mountain and rolled off a cliff many times over. So I understand what efforts take, and I understand the humility of when you slip. But I think for an encouragement standpoint is knowing that in every moment is a fresh moment. So you have the opportunity to make deposits into your cosmic bank account. And
what is this cosmic bank account?
That's your karma.
No, cosmic bank account's not the karma.
Yeah.
Cosmic bank account is the intelligence of the gatekeeper learning how to navigate the space next time that opportunity
So
comes
from
around, right? That would be the bank. So the gatekeeper's guarding the bank.
Yeah,
right?
but it's cosmic. So you could come from.
Yeah, that would be cosmic.
Yeah, you can come.
Well, what would your options be?
Yeah, so you can come from one incarnation to the next, and you will have a bank statement with you. Depending if you liberated and you reach nirvana or the pearly white gates, whatever you want to call them, then guess what? Your bank account was reconciled. You reached enlightenment, and voila, yay! Now that's not everyone has that great fortune, and so
well, they can.
Let me finish. Let me finish. So most people, I help people die. And so most people, no matter what their faith is, I work with people of all different faiths.
Grim Reaper. You're the Grim Reaper.
I'm not a Grim Reaper. It's a very sacred act to help people transition. Anyways, so they all have a sense that they've been here before, no matter what their theological belief system is or lack of one. So right there in that standpoint, I've helped a lot of people cross over. They have that sense. They could be devout Catholics, Christians, Jews, Muslims, whatever they might be. And so they'll have this sense. They're like, yeah, I know what I'm told, but I have this sense. And so that sense is that if you've sensed you've been there somewhere before here, and here you are, if you haven't been in your practice, if you haven't been working to get up that mountain, engage in your gatekeeper, more than likely you potentially are not going to get to your pearly gates, potentially. And so from there, you might enter into another existence, another incarnation with your bank account. And so that's what I'm talking about when I say the bank account, is that those actions, if you spent, like I have a friend, he and his wife are dedicated to kindness and generosity every single day. And you're around them and it's super contagious. That's all they're doing. So all they're doing is juicing up life and everyone around them every single day. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing to be around. They're not in a taking mode. They're in a deep trust mode. And so I can tell you their cosmic bank account's quite full. Now, if they transition and liberate beyond, we'll see. Or they'll be back here, and I'm sure they'll do it just as much or more. So I just don't want to discourage anyone just because they might fall down the mountain or haven't really adhered to what their gatekeeper is recommending.
Well, there won't be a question as to whether anybody or any of us falls down the mountain again. That will happen. It's how you feel about the slip that will determine how long it takes for you to get up off your feet, get up off your butt and get back on your feet, get up back up the mountain. The reveal is that after about 1,000 failures, you have to have a sense of humor about your own failure, and in doing that, you're taking note of the opportunity. And
absolutely, and that's where humility comes in.
And getting caught with your pants down, so to speak, in life, when you thought you were prepared to manage it in the right way, and then all of a sudden you become reactive. You get pulled into somebody else's darkness, and you find yourself as dark as they are. One of two things happens: either you're playing at being as dark as they are, which allows you to maintain your perspective, or you get pulled in entirely.
Well, we could use light too. You can get pulled into someone's light, but the honest, if we're being honest with where we are in space and observing ourselves and connected to where we're working towards those efforts, like we talked about a master athlete or artist or an enlightened human being, there's no question at all. And we eventually figure it out, no different than different things that people learn to do.
Well, that's just the thing, is that not everybody figures this out. And so
the universe is patient, Thomas.
Well, they don't have to. They just follow the steps. If they take time to understand what being present or in alignment with the universe is, or themselves in relation to the world around them, and they begin to be curious about who they are conscientiously in relation to everything, and regain a fresh perspective of who they are, not the educated one, not the one that the university told you were, not the one your parents told you were, not the one your kids tell you are, not the one your friends tell you are, not the one that the news tells you are, but the one that you are. The one that you are. And if you get enough of that, then the gatekeeper becomes more of an asset, and not everything gets in, and you're not so susceptible to being pulled into different spheres and pulled away from the main journey, which is to keep yourself on top of the game so you can be an asset to the world around you, and to be the best you possible. And that simply is a shift of perspective. That shift of perspective requires a certain type of a will that can sustain an effort. And so making right effort is really what that gatekeeper learns how to do, and learns how to stay diligent, and can assess and then begin to negotiate with the karmic cycles, with the things that are orbiting around its core, and manage those things so that those comets can be set free to go cycle somewhere else. Or you can be set free from that and go find another larger planet to circulate around and learn something from. The idea is to...
So you're a runner.
The idea is to...
Thomas is a runner.
Thomas is a runner.
Not
right.
a transformer.
Well, if you transform, then you're free. You're not stuck in the karmic
right.
vortex, the gravity of, let's say an overbearing parent, or a matriarch that's destroyed the family due to its momminess, or a patriarch, or abusive patriarch that's repressed everybody. If you are one of those children in one of those families, you don't have to stay in it. You can re-see it with fresh eyes, and really work hard to manage and see these people for what they are, what they really are, and not take on what the bad lessons that they've given you. And in doing that, you've opened up your sphere of experience. And
of course, but you can also serve that realm too. There's ways to serve those people. And
well, you just keep taking me back.
No, I'm not taking you back anywhere. If all of a sudden you have a fresh pair of eyes and you realize that you don't want to do that dance, you can still be in the room and be of service. Because ultimately, people that are unaware, they need help, They need some assistance. And that's where awareness is so powerful. That's why they have bodhisattvas, people that come here to be of service to one another. So it's not so much about the me or the I, it's about, hey, how can I be of service and help this person elevate, How can I help this person along their way, or how can I point them in the right direction? Or how can I be a neutralizing force in this dynamic in the room?
I would suggest that if you went down that road and you realized that it wasn't about you, at any point you're going to lose your way.
Well, to be of service isn't about you.
It is. It's about how you are while you're in the room with whomever you're helping. And if you're not taking care of the how you are, then you can't really be effective.
Right. I'm talking about when you're kind of crossed over with your gatekeeper and there's not really... You're in a place like the flow, like we talked about the athletes, like Martina Hoffman, indie creator. She steps in front of her canvas and she's in her flow. She doesn't have to do anything ahead of time. She knows right how to be in alignment with her gatekeeper, and she's transforming those canvases, creating those art portals.
Yeah, well, that's
so it's no different for someone in service when they step into that space.
Well, I wouldn't say she's of service as much as she's serving herself in her art.
Well, her art's a service to others, I would say, definitely.
But not in the creation of it, right? It's just her on the canvas and her and whatever she's reflecting. And then on that, she's able to
So let's break this down a little, because we've gone kind of circular, talk about karmic.
Isn't that funny? You hear what she just said? She just went circular talking about karmic.
Yeah, so...
Karmic is circular.
It might be good to break it down.
Suzanne Toro has jokes. That's jokes, people. That's a conscious joke.
That's a conscious joke. So it might be good to break it down. Observe yourself, and with those observations, with the breath, self-observation, self-pictures, and then you'll start to determine if your gatekeeper's awake or not. And then engagement, maybe having a good long sit with yourself, aka your gatekeeper. That gatekeeper starts to engage with you, stays awake with you, morning, noon, and night. And then from there, the understanding of your karmic cycles gets a little bit easier. And then your karmic efforts to help support your well-being, like you mentioned, Thomas, food, the type of things you do on a daily basis, to, it might be exercise, it might be the space that you create for your work, whatever it might be. Those things can fill you up in a way that allow you to be in that reciprocation with the world around you, whether it's nature, your family, your friends, all those kind of things. That juice creates the reciprocation and the regeneration. Like, I was actually reading in this book, which is an amazing book. I'd recommend it to anyone. Living Energies. It takes science, how we work in science, but it takes also esoteric explanations. But if you think about a tree doesn't stop working at the top of the crown of its head, it actually is going into an energetic exchange with the sun that's so far away, creating photosynthesis and creating oxygen and converting energy. And so we're similar. That our being emits energy and extends beyond just the physical action. So it's around us everywhere. This opportunity to make choices.
Well, right, exactly. And the quality of those choices really has to do with the gatekeeper being awake and having a good sense of what it is in relation to the world around it. And we hope that gatekeeper awakens to the point that it can begin to start managing ancestral karma and hardwiring karma, and to be able to get a sense of what is sickness, what is bad energy relative to what is possible, what feels good, and what allows for a lighter type of energy to begin to move through the body and physiologically, shift it and wake it up and start to build that amazing aura that can come from extremely healthy people that are perceiving, eating, and doing good things. And good things would just be the things that allow you to maintain your being, maintain your integrity within the moment, and allow basically that divine human that's within all of us to show. And so that would be the next step. And so all the talk about karma is, how are we when we are facing down one of our past traumas? How are we when we are faced with a difficult set of circumstances, like a riot or a death in the family, a tragic death in the family, or something worse happening, violence that can occur, or abuse that can occur, or all of these things that we would possibly slip into victimhood with? How do we use those things and see those things and never even get close to identifying yourself as a victim, but to seeing these real challenges as challenges to be transformed?
Well, I think
to shoot us up into a catalyst.
Of course.
Shoot us up into a stratosphere where we are actually touching higher states of consciousness, higher centers that could be operating within us.
Yeah. Well, most people will attest that their adversity has risen them to higher states of being, higher states of awareness. And I think also it's important, because it's easy to go to the negativity or the bads, but the good things that juice you up, that are going to build you internally. Again, we're in society is interdependent, not codependent. So especially in a peace, love, spiritual community, there's a lot of fakey, a lot of people not being really honest with themselves, or haven't even engaged the gatekeeper. And if you look at higher vibrational frequencies, you have to come into rational, objective states of awareness to actually even reach like Christ consciousness or Buddha consciousness. That's why, in at least the Tibetan community, debate and study and science and math is there, because there's an object rational training there to help the mind go in, coupled with spiritual practice, to go into those higher states of consciousness. So a lot of people will say, oh, peace, love, happiness, and it's a great sentiment, it's like a Hallmark card, but there's a lot of effort that has to happen to truly embody peace, consciousness, inner peace, equanimity.
And so that effort would be self-observation.
Self-observation.
Right. So, which allows us to start to make adjustments, start to take care of the karmic spinning circles in our mind, allowing the mind to take a back seat to consciousness, allow the mind to take a break. Some people can't stop thinking.
Yeah.
Some people think that all of that's all they are their thoughts, and that's an easy thing to believe until meditation kicks in and those thoughts stop when there's an alignment with the body and the earth, or the cosmos, or however you want to look at it. And then, as the voice starts to come in, as that state is maintained, now we have alignment. Now we have proper alignment where we're not losing where we are in time and space, and our thoughts are assisting in the objective reality of what can be done and good choices are made. That's when the gatekeeper gets balanced, and that's when we're starting to get enough indication that what's happening, that part of our personality is beginning to shift and be reprioritized into that big, brand new, shiny file that's being nurtured every single day by perceiving through the present. And that's just one step. See, the idea is that once we're in that present mode, that gatekeeper gets educated, now we can start to perceive the world in a very unique way, in a way that will allow us to function and to sustain a higher and a higher effort. And we eventually wouldn't want to even think about being another place. And for a lot of people, like if you're an artist, you're lucky because your work demands that of you. But it's not so obvious when it comes down to people that don't call themselves an artist or aren't endeavoring in the arts for a reason to sustain that effort. But it doesn't matter what job that you have. You can be a master of yourself within that job and evolve within whatever it is that you're doing. And that's where things get really special. And that's where people start to realize their potential and can then naturally become of service. Becoming of service, a lot of times people say, well, be of service, be of service. And if you evolve to a certain point, you will naturally be of service. You will naturally look for opportunities to help, or you will be pulled into opportunities where it'd be just a natural fit for you to do something. And that's what we have to look forward to. And there's many, this is just the first steps to a portal that's going to open wide up to a whole nother realm of possibilities. And that's when we start to realize the magic of being human. And because a human can be magic, we also know that the magic surrounds us. Without the magic already being here, we couldn't perceive the fantastic things that are right here, right now. And that's what's cool about the journey that we're on right now. So we're at 58 minutes.
Wow,
40
that went
seconds.
fast.
Wow, we got like a minute and 15 seconds to close this up. But do you have any closing thoughts? And so next week we'll be dealing with the gatekeeper in relation to karma, but then having slayed karma, transformation of negativity. How to transform negativity, which takes the gatekeeper into another level of education.
Right. Sounds good. I think, yeah.
Isn't that the next thing on the list?
Yeah.
Right?
So that sounds good.
Well, go ahead. Sum her up, Suzanne.
All right. So as inspired, keep observing self, observing your breath, bring yourself into the present moment. Take those pictures, maybe have a little honest chat with yourself where your afflictions are, your karmic wheels are spinning in your life, and see if you can take responsibility and engage your gatekeeper. With that body of information, you should have a really good sense of where you're at. And then from there, next week, we'll engage further into this conversation, transforming negativity. So
right,
you're on Oneness Talk Radio. Thanks for listening.
Yeah,
this is Suzanne Toro and Thomas Ardavany.
Great, wonderful. Let's take it out.
Right?
That's Shiva.
Wow, Shiva. Tell us about Shiva.
Shiva, the destroyer of ignorance. From another, we can find them from within.
So you're on Oneness Talk Radio with Thomas Ardavany.